Hi, I'm Jackie Gruninger with Yoga with Jackie and At Home Yoga and Wellbeing. And I thought today we might just spend a little bit of time talking about sitting. For so many people, sitting in yoga is really a challenge and might even keep them from coming to a yoga class because they can't sit in what is this traditional yoga pose we call Sukhasana. We're not even going to get into the lotus pose today because that really is for people who have been practicing yoga for a long time and have really open hips and knees and ankles. But this first pose that we do find a lot in yoga is called Sukhasana, which actually means easy pose, although it's not easy for everyone. Basically, you're sitting in a cross-legged position with your ankles in line with one another, the heels of your feet drawing in toward your pelvis. One of the best ways to sit, no matter how you sit in yoga, is to start by sitting up on a blanket. I love to sit on a folded blanket. First, it lifts my hips up a little bit higher, which then allows me to have a slight anterior tilt to my pelvis, which can help with opening up the hips and the knees and just give me a more comfortable seat. You can make your blanket fold it as many times as you need to make it comfortable for you. For me, one fold. It's also going to depend upon how thick your blanket is. When you get up on that blanket, you want to be halfway on and halfway off, and that will make a difference. If you're just sitting all the way up on the blanket, it does give more hip and leg support, but you might not find that you can sit up really tall. One of the things the blanket does is helps you to lengthen your spine. So that would be one way to sit in this easy pose on a blanket. You can also sit cross-legged, where you slide your feet underneath you so that you get a little bit more support for your legs and your hips, and you might still want to sit up on a blanket while you do this. It's always a good idea, whether you're sitting in Sukhasana or cross-legged, to every once in a while cross the other way. We all have habits and patterns, ways that we do things all the time, and you can see that this side is a little different for me than my other side. So it's always good to let yourself sit with one leg in front and then the other leg in front for a little while. All right, other ways that you can sit. You can just sit with your legs straight out in front of you. They can be wide, they can be close together. It doesn't really matter. It's however you can sit in a way that feels good to you. Again, I'd slide forward a little bit on that blanket so that you can lift up and out of your pelvis. You may also find that bringing the soles of your feet together feel good for you. And if you have knees that are way up in the sky, you can take your blocks or other blankets or towels. I like to take the blocks and place them at a slight angle so that the flat side of the block sits against my leg. That's a little more comfortable, I think, than just having the hard edge of the block be there. Another option that you might consider is sitting on two blankets. This is one of my favorites. So you open one blanket up, so there's a lot of cushion. For some people, the ankles can be a little sensitive. And then you take your other blanket and you fold it behind you. And this can be a really nice, comfortable seat as well in any of those versions that I just showed you. I do like this one too, because if it's a little cold, you can fold that blanket over you. It's a nice hand rest for your arms while you're sitting here as well. Another option, you might have a bolster or a couple of hard like couch pillows around, and sitting up on that bolster can give you just a little bit more support for the hips. You can sit this way with the feet in Sukhasana or cross-legged. You can also sit in that bound angle position. And again, we're looking for a place where you can feel comfortable, one, and where you can really lift up and out of your pelvis so that your spine is very tall. Another option that you might consider if you have blocks is sitting up on your blocks. One of the postures that we'll look at for sitting is called Thunderbolt. And the blocks are going to sit in between your feet. And there's lots of options for your blocks. I'd say start with 2 to see where you are. And I like the blocks because I'm not a very narrow person. I like the blocks to go short edges of the blocks toward the long edges of my mat. You might want to place a blanket underneath you as well here for support of your knees and your ankles. And this position is actually really good for people who have knee issues. You might not think so at first, but it takes a lot of pressure off the knee joint. So you'll place those blocks in between your feet and then sit back on the blocks. The knees can come close together, or you can keep them a little bit separate. And you might find that 2 blocks is too high. I usually like to have 1 block turned on its thin, long edge, and that feels best for my body. But your body might be different. If you're very tall, you might actually need 3 blocks. So those are some things to consider, how tall you are. Another option for the blocks is to sit on them just like you would sit on a chair in more of a squatting position, with your buttocks on the blocks and the feet out in front of you. This can feel very comfortable, and you can probably be here for a long time. That's another thing to keep in mind when you're sitting. You don't have to stay sitting in the same position the whole time. If you need to shake out your legs and release them before the teacher asks you to do that, be sure to go ahead and do that. That's totally fine. All right, the last way to sit, and I don't have it here right with me, but is start your class in a chair. Just bring a chair over to your yoga mat, sit on the chair. You can lean all the way back in the chair, or you can sit forward and very upright with your feet flat on the floor in the chair. You just want to make sure it's not a rolling chair. And then when your teacher says we're going to start moving into something else like table position, you can move the chair, get down on your hands and knees, and do the rest of class with them. I hope that this short tutorial on sitting has been helpful for you. And remember, it's about practicing. It's about figuring out what works best in your body, and know that every day that might be different. I look forward to seeing you again. Jai Bhagwan, Namaste.